Hello, and welcome to the First Issue Club. We are your weekly comic book podcast where, just like Sue Storm, we love a good read. Vargas?
Mike?
It's a scary time of year.
The elevated levels of spooky
Yeah.
in the world.
I'm jittery every corner I turn around.
Is there going to be a skeleton? A Dracula? A Frankenstein?
Any of the classics could pop up.
Probably not a creature from the Black Lagoon. You're safe from most creatures.
And there isn't a lagoon around here, so I think I'm solid there. He would be a very dried out, dehydrated lagoon guy.
Yes.
We're here to talk to you all about first issue comic books. There was so many this week.
A lot of big hitters.
Are they getting spookier as the year goes on? Kind of.
Yes.
There's been a lot of horror comics recently.
And I read all of them.
Did you? Hey, all right. I love it. So maybe we'll have some spooky scaries for you later on in the episode, and some traditional superhero and some fun indie comic stuff. We've got quite a smorgasbord, a cornucopia, just to stay on fall theme.
Yes. A smattering.
Of different choices for you. A charcuterie of comic books.
Perfect.
And as always, we're going to be talking about some comic book news on this bad boy.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Oh, yeah. That's why I have my phone out.
Because you've got news?
Because I have news.
I have some news as well.
Oh, we both did news.
It might be some of the same news.
It's all news.
I can't wait to talk about the friggin' news with you, man.
But first, we wouldn't be here without the lovely folks at Boulevard, specifically Space Camper Cosmic IPA.
My favorite IPA. Such a drinkable, hoppy beer with plenty of varietals for different tastes in hops.
Once again, I got excited while we were recording our Patreon, and I
Yep.
drank all of mine.
Yep.
But I was drinking Cryonic Crush, the Chilling IPA, which is another one that I've never had. It feels like every time I come over, you have another one that I've never had.
Yeah, I love how often they do varietals of
Yes,
this.
but this was incredibly crisp,
Yeah, really drinkable, that one.
incredibly refreshing.
Yep.
I know we say this every time, but it never ceases to amaze me how non-bitter these are compared to a lot of other less drinkable IPAs.
Yeah, this is a beer. I know we're sponsored and all, but we're also beer lovers and beer nerds and are very sincere when we say we're glad this is our hometown beer. When we go to like Chiefs games, Royals games, the
Cardinals games, Blues games.
all that good stuff, we are so lucky to have a beer that has flavor at our stadiums. If it wasn't for Boulevard Brewing, there would be nothing like this that gives you a nice buzz and a lot of beer flavor at a sports game.
For sure.
This is like my one option I have to go to. Otherwise, I'm drinking a crazy tall boy that
Of
was
Bud Light.
$20, tastes like nothing, and isn't going to give me a minutia of a buzz while I'm out enjoying sports.
Yes.
So, cheers to you, Boulevard, for sponsoring yet another episode of the First Issue Club podcast. We love you.
We do. Okay, on to the news. I'll blast. You've got a lot of news. We'll see if anything crosses over.
Did you say you were going to bless me with some news?
No, I said we'll blast through some news.
We'll blast through. Okay. Because we have so many comics to talk about, but thank you for blessing me.
Spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch.
That's right.
Okay.
Bag boards for the Lord.
Perfect. Yes. Kirby Lee.
Oh, that's a good one.
Okay.
We'll discuss who the last two are later on.
Yeah.
Kirby and Lee are definitely there, though.
All right. So I've got a couple. Ultimate Wolverine is the next Ultimate book that's coming out.
Oh, should we say first, we are in the midst of a New York Comic-Con.
Yes, of course.
Which is why like a lot of news is dropping. We are recording this on a Thursday.
Yeah.
So by the time the episode drops, there may be more comic book news that we haven't talked about yet, but we'll get to it next week. We'll kind of do like more of an NYCC rundown probably.
Yeah. So far today was Industry Day.
Yes.
Where they had like comic shop owners and small publishers come.
And our buddy Doug from the Geekery in New Jersey,
Yes.
in Mattawan, went and was sending us a lot of pictures of interesting panels, announcements,
Meeting creators.
yeah, really like exclusive conversations
Yeah.
that were, I think a little more direct and business side than you're typically used to hearing at panels, which I'm honestly like, I would have loved to have been able to go to something like that because
Totally.
as a bigger comic book fan, you're kind of interested in like the ins and outs, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then when you go to some of these panels, they're just like, here's what the character is going to look like. You want to talk about the design, and it's just like, so I thought the neon pants really stuck off the.
Could Superboy beat Supergirl? Please discuss.
And yeah, there's a lot of questions of who could beat who. Like, I always hate when they open up the floor for questions at cons because it's always the same 10 trite questions you've heard a million times. And then there's always the couple people who ask the most nuanced, specific question about something that happened in one issue. And does that mean something for this issue? And the creator's like, I have no idea what you're referencing. It's like, even I don't have those details locked down. Or they ask a question about like where the story's going, and they're like, I can't tell you that.
Why would I tell you? I can't.
The whole point is to read the comic and have fun.
No, Mike, the whole point is to have an encyclopedic knowledge of exactly Batman's Batarang style.
I'm a Grinch about these panel things, but yeah, the idea of the industry ones and some of the things they were talking about and announcing were like very cool.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so one of the announcements made today was Ultimate Wolverine is a new book that's coming in 2025 from Chris Condon of That Texas Blood fame.
Yeah.
And Alessandra Capuccio, who is doing the art on Moon Knight right now.
Yeah.
And the kind of ultimate twist here is that Wolverine is the Winter Soldier.
Very cool.
Where we don't know who's behind the mask yet necessarily, but yeah, the Wolverine is the Winter Soldier. He's the guy who's been frozen and reanimated over and over to assassinate targets and has claws and a sick Winter Soldier mask.
I love it.
Yeah. Very cool twist.
I'm excited to read this. It's one of these things where just like good writer, Wolverine, interesting premise.
Great artist.
Yeah, great artist. Slam dunk.
I am assuming, I'll make the assumption that Benjamin Percy is highly informative to Chris in his endeavors.
Sure.
Because Benjamin Percy's been writing Wolverine for ever. But my hope would be that Chris takes cues from old Ben, because Ben can write the hell out of Wolverine.
Yeah, he's really good at capturing Logan's voice.
Yeah. But I guess that being said, it might not even be Logan, so I could be just talking right out of my ass.
Yeah, very true. And I do think that one of the funnest things about the Ultimate line of comics is that they don't exist necessarily in the continuity of the 616. Well, let me caveat that. They kind of technically do. But they are standalone stories that assume people's like life origin was different than it was in your mainline comics.
Right.
So there's potential to have some real fun. Wolverine's a totally different guy than he was raised different experiences were formative to this person.
Maybe Bucky Barnes is Wolverine. You know, maybe that's the twist. Anyway, I thought that was very cool. The creative team had me excited.
The character design looks killer.
Yeah, totally. So that's going to be another must pick up. Some other NYCC news. Another new champion is debuting in Spider-Boy 13. So we know that...
Yeah, it's a Spider-Girl, right? No, this is a different character?
This is a different character. Spider-Girl's coming in Spider-Boy 12.
Okay.
Spider-Boy 13 is introducing Hulkette.
Oh.
Who is like a
young
little
girl Hulk?
Teenage Hulk.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Hulkette.
Spider-Boy is kind of shaping up to be a...
introduce all the youngins.
Yeah, like a lot of new character introductions. Yeah. And if Dan Slott has anything to say about it, I'm sure those characters won't just be like flash in the pan characters.
Yeah.
He doesn't typically do that.
Yep.
So I don't know. The idea of like a baby girl Hulk sounds pretty fun to me.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
I thought that was
Oh, I had
worth
no
broadening.
idea.
Yeah.
Nice.
Her character design is fun. You know, obviously she's like little Hulk. You know, she's green, but she's wearing like overalls and a striped shirt and got like red hair.
Uh-huh.
It's very fun. Very
All right,
cute.
right on.
Some of the big Marvel announcements here was 2025 is going to be like the year of Doom.
Uh-huh.
And the Doctor Doom centric event for 25 is that he's going to become Emperor of Earth.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So he has already become, courtesy of Bloodhunt, he is the Sorcerer Supreme of our realm, and will presumably use that power to instill himself as the Emperor of Earth.
Yeah. Who knows what that means?
It means they're trying to tie in comics to what's happening with the
movies?
the Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah, that's probably right. That'll be interesting. Sometimes Marvel does this thing where they kind of have like Storm is like the voice of our solar system.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like she's like the chancellor that like goes and speaks to other people from other universes and other solar systems because the X-Men exist on like a galactic scale now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people on Earth like don't have a say in it and like don't necessarily acknowledge it because it means nothing to them because they're just like Joe Schmoes with jobs, right?
Yeah.
It's like I can't fathom a scale where there's like politics beyond my country.
Yeah, national politics are big enough.
Let alone my like planet and then the whole solar system.
Yeah.
So it could be one of those things where it's very heavy-handed politically in a comic, and it could be one of those things where it's just like, yeah, he's claimed himself as emperor, and like, I don't know, whatever is happening in Latveria is just happening in Latveria, and we'll just go on with our lives.
Well, presumably, if you're making yourself Emperor of Earth, you're going to have to deal with the Shi'ar and the Brood and, you know, all of those sort of galactic level, like planetary level.
Yeah, people who frequent Earth.
Yeah, those kinds of folks. So, anyway, if you're a Doom fan, stuff to look forward to next year.
Yep.
The DC Compact series, have you seen these trades they're doing?
No.
Dude.
I don't think so.
They're blowing up. So they are the full volume graphic novels presented in like the size of that notebook you've got there.
No, really?
Yeah. They're maybe probably a little bit bigger than that, but they're smaller than a normal comic or trade. But they sell them for $10. And yeah,
Maybe
that's
like
that's
size of
probably
that.
about right. Yeah. So whatever, beer can for scale.
There's a
Yeah.
comic book backing board.
Yeah, there we go.
And then the
Yeah, that's probably about right.
interesting. You wonder if the text would be too small. I guess people are buying them and liking them.
They're loving them. People are snatching these things up because they're $10 a piece.
Yeah, that is affordable.
But it's stuff like Watchmen, Batman Year One.
Yeah.
You know, sort of like the heavy hitter.
Like all
stuff.
of Watchmen is
all
in one
of Watchmen
of them? Oh,
is in one of
interesting.
them, right?
Yeah.
For $10.
Sounds like they're like manga sized.
That's exactly what it is. They're
Okay.
manga sized. You can throw them in a backpack. You know,
Yeah.
it's like airport reading material. They are doing very well. They're selling incredibly. They're at Walmart. They're at Target. They're at those kinds of places.
Can I say something about this?
Yeah.
I love the idea when you mentioned throwing in a backpack and that they're smaller things. When I think about buying manga, it's just like throw it in your suitcase when you're on a work trip and crush some manga on the plane.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if the book gets torn up. It drives me nuts when you see reviews on websites and people are reviewing Watchmen or they're reviewing another classic and they're like, 1 star, arrived damaged. Like my paperback copy of The Watchmen has a bent corner. And it's like, who cares? It's what you're supposed to like experience it and go through it and like bang it up a little bit as you're reading it. Like
it's not a floppy copy of Watchmen 1.
Fall in love with it. I kind of dig the sentiment of something that it's like, yeah, it's meant to be read. It's not so precious. Like toss it in your backpack, read it on the go.
Yeah.
That resonates with me.
Well, good, because they're expanding the line. So
right.
next year's, at least the highlights that I wrote down, next year's new releases include Kingdom Come, Superman Birthright, Batwoman Elegy, Deceased, and more.
Wow, okay.
So they're throwing in some obviously classic material, some newer stuff.
I love Batwoman Elegy.
It's so good. It's so good.
And can I say, I've got an issue of two of Kingdom Come. Never read it in its entirety.
Really?
I was really young when Kingdom Come
Yeah.
was out.
I mean, it was before I was reading comics for sure.
Yeah.
It's good. It's better than Justice.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's...
This is one of the things I really am enjoying DC so much now because I grew up a Marvel guy. I've been reading my Marvel ongoing since I was a kid, basically. And there's so much great DC stuff now that I can just pick up a trade and crush the entire thing. And it's such a good reading experience to read everything like sequentially.
Yeah.
I just have so many classics that I haven't been exposed to that now as an adult with expendable income, it's like my DC era. I love it.
Well, pick up the
Even
the
cheaper
compact
and more
edition.
affordable
Yeah,
now. I
that's
love
exactly
that.
Right.
That's really cool.
You can bring it to the office and read it on your lunch break. Not that you have an office to go to.
Yep.
But you get the sentiment.
I get the idea. Yeah.
So this next news hit is a little heavier.
Ugh.
Have you seen any of the backlash to Wonder Woman issue 14?
I have. Yeah. That's big news right now.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about it?
I think so. Let's put a time frame on it in case anyone wants to avoid spoilers.
Okay.
Let's say we're 17-ish minutes in, and let's say in the next 5 minutes we'll have exhausted this conversation.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so skip ahead 5 minutes if you don't want to have any of this spoiled for you.
Okay, so I'll go spoilers first so we get those out of the way. Steve Trevor dies
Yes.
permanently.
Which is Wonder Woman's long time love interest.
Correct.
Throughout tons of classics. A huge major character death.
Yeah. But on top of that, the way that he dies enabled Wonder Woman to thread together their strings of life and birth a child who's called Trinity.
Yes, and we've been building to who exactly is Trinity. We know it's the daughter of Wonder Woman, but we don't know much else.
Right.
We just know this character is coming because DC has done some jump ahead stories that show her as a 6-year-old, a preteen, a teenager.
But now we know that it's Steve Trevor's daughter.
Steve Trevor's posthumous
Correct.
child.
And there's a lot in this story that people are freaking out about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of imagery in the series, I guess, that people are freaking out about. There's an image of Wonder Woman crying on an American flag that a lot of people don't like. They don't like the idea of Steve Trevor being dead. They don't like the idea of this kid kind of being born out of his demise in a way that's very comic booky.
Yeah, the child was kind of molded out of clay.
Yes.
Which again has some kind of biblical references that may be uneasy for people who are very religious.
Yeah.
I don't know. I understand that this stuff is hard for people when Wonder Woman has existed in a certain way for nearly 100 years. You know what I mean? And so a lot of times when we kill characters off at Marvel, they're a flash in the pan compared to the history that DC Comics has, right?
Sure.
And when things change or there's big momentous moments in comics, or you give Wonder Woman a daughter, you're changing the dynamic of a character that's existed in a certain fashion since the 50s, 40s, 30s, depending on how far you want to go back in the timeline of when the character truly evolved into what it ultimately became over time. But on the whole, the character design's kind of similar to, to what it was at the dawn of comic books, the entire medium. So yeah, I understand people are frustrated, but you gotta love. I love Tom King so much. He's
Yeah.
such a good creator, and you gotta trust. I think some of these like creators like this who make big decisions to do something interesting. And at some point, I think something like this has to be done. And, it's all comics, it's all fantasy. Maybe you bring a character back to life after some time. But in the moment, we got to experience this thing that was kind of unique to DC Comics and the way they tell stories and the structure. And like, to me, it kind of gets stale after a while when you see Batman let the Joker go, like year after year after year after year.
To be more inflammatory about it, since Greg isn't here.
Yeah.
Cry more, nerds. I hate this conversation every time it happens because it's like the issue has been out for like 24 hours.
Yeah.
And people are popping off online about it. And like, first and foremost, it's a comic book. You need to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Second, we don't know what the story is.
Yeah.
Third, it's Tom King. And if he's not a trustworthy enough creator to do something with Wonder Woman, nobody is. And DC's not going to let him ruin Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's enough of the take.
Yes.
You guys understand where I'm coming from.
And we're right about at our 22 minutes.
Okay.
So this is perfect.
Okay.
I will say the America of it all.
Sure.
Like Tom King, Washington, D.C. guy, used to work for the government, makes, I think, beautiful political statements about our country through fantasy characters.
Yes.
I personally love that about him, and this is something for me if like you can't handle something that challenges the idea of like what your nation is and that there are good guys and bad guys in it. It's like I think some people when America gets talked about in a comic book are like, well, there's like one or two bad guys left. We're about to catch the last bad guy in America. And then everything will be fine after that.
Uh-huh.
It's like nothing exists in such a binary like that. And I understand that it's comic books, but we're in an era now where we're writing more complex stories to keep people with more complex interests entertained.
Yeah.
And there's more to say about the culture we live in through this pop culture lens. So,
and there's 100 years of Wonder Woman if you don't want to read this.
yeah, that's
like,
exactly right.
Go read any
that's
other
exactly
Wonder
right. Start from 80 years ago if you would like.
The All-Star Comics 84 or whatever it was. Good, go nuts.
Great call. All right, fun conversation.
And then the last one I have is we have to dunk on the new IDW logo.
Yeah.
Google it right now. Google IDW logo, and it looks terrible. You're a design guy.
Yes.
And I showed this to you, and you had the same face as I did.
Kind of blank stare, speechless for a moment. Let me say this. When you stand back and gather it as an image.
No, IDW.
There's interesting design work going on. There is it looks like a pretty mark, right? Like
sure.
It's got dynamism. It's interesting. It
looks like it's whooshing.
It was created by somebody with technical skill. Like I don't want to take away too much from it because I do have a design background and I understand how hard it is to make a logo that people are happy with and create branding. However, you really have to stare at it and soak it in to understand that it is IDW.
Yes.
It looks like it is LD.
Yeah.
And you really got to spend a moment with it to find the IDW in it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get a little too cutesy and creative with oh, here's the way the letters play off each other. Not everything can be a fun visual play. Sometimes a serif and the damn letters are plenty enough.
Yeah.
Pick a cool color, pick a nice font, and you're friggin' good to go on a logo. I think this tried to get a little too cute, and it's like now you can't read it.
Yeah. It
is not recognizable as the letters IDW.
Yeah, and that's the problem. They
Yeah.
tried to turn the letters into too much of a logo.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, it's getting absolutely eviscerated online.
Mm-hmm.
Your take is, as I assumed it would be, far more nuanced and informed because you do this for a living
Yeah.
than I think a lot of people that are absolutely mashing this thing.
Yeah, right.
So if you want to read the actual bad takes, well, different takes, you can find them.
It's creative that they got the letters in there.
Yeah,
it's just
sure.
like you just have to step outside of yourself and say, okay, I did this thing. It is creative and clever upon further inspection. But if I step 5 feet back from it and look at it, is it even recognizable at all? And it's not.
It looks like it took a lot of convincing to sell, like, no, actually, this will be very good.
Yeah.
Let me explain to you why.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you have like I've definitely presented things to clients before, and they have this kind of like, oh yeah moment with something that seems really cool in the room.
Yeah.
You're like, this is our FedEx moment, where you realize the FedEx logo has the arrow in it.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's fucking cool, dude.
But you should go out on the street and be like, what does this say?
Yes, exactly right. This is what makes the FedEx moment cool is that it very clearly says FedEx, and
incidentally has an arrow.
And incidentally they've arranged the type in a way where it like looks perfectly normal type, and then has an arrow in it to allude to forward progress, moving thing from one point to another. Like, this is not that.
Yeah. So look forward to that logo for the next whatever.
Yeah, who knows how long it'll last.
It sucks that they invested that money in that.
Yeah.
Anyway, what news you got, Mike?
Oh, let me look. Can I say too? You know what logo I like that I don't think lasted very long?
What?
Was the DC logo that was, it looked like a sticker being pulled back.
Yeah, the page turn logo.
Yes. It was like, the page. So you're like turning a page like a comic, but like if you look at like a D starting to invert backwards, it becomes a C.
Yeah.
I thought that was so
I
clever.
like that logo too.
And it's so not, it requires like a lot of color and variation and shade to get the effect, to have it make sense, which is like so out of vogue now. But that's a comic book logo that holds like a special place in my heart. I think it's like really interesting.
I like that one too. And interestingly enough, since we're talking about logos, DC, I think this is the second week, they've gone back to the
the stars,
the bullet, which
for All In. Does it say All In on it anywhere?
Not on the DC logo, no.
Okay,
that's their big initiative. But
I've noticed a lot of the All In books have that logo at the moment.
I think that's clearly they're trying to score nostalgia points.
Yes, sure. It's a new thing. Feels reminiscent.
Yeah.
Okay. Marvel Team Up is coming back-ish.
Oh, okay.
J. Michael Straczynski is writing like 6 one-shots. They're all going to be number 1s. But the first one we're getting is Doctor Doom and Rocket Raccoon. And
I actually like that a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. If you're not familiar with Marvel Team Up, this was an old series that was just like, here's a fun way to smash together 2 characters you love who would otherwise maybe not meet that often.
Sure.
And it was really fun as a kid. And again, standalone issues that you could pick up and just enjoy on a whim because they're 2 characters you like and the cover caught your eye.
Yeah.
So I like when Marvel's kind of entertaining this or doing something nostalgic.
That's fun.
Like that. Okay. The first ever deal to adapt a comic into an opera was made. Did you see this on our Discord at all?
Oh, yeah. They're doing...
The Minnesota Opera Company is creating an adaptation of The Many Deaths of Layla Starr.
That's right.
A Ram V comic and Felipe Andrade that we absolutely loved at the club. Gorgeous miniseries that on Boom, maybe? Does
Yeah,
that
it's
sound
Boom.
right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, really beautiful comic. I love the idea of this. I don't know how long it's going to take to get this production made, and I don't know how often these things like maybe stall out and don't actually happen, but I'm stoked that they're trying something like this,
Yeah.
and I would 100% drive the, like day road trip to Minnesota to go see something like this. A comic book I love.
Yeah.
Really interesting to see what that would be like in opera form.
They should absolutely set up a stream for this.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people would buy a $10 ticket
Just to like watch
stream
it digitally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Thanks. I'll call them.
Yeah, let them know. Jason Aaron and Mahmoud Asrar,
Mm-hmm.
who you know from teaming up on Conan.
Yep.
When Conan was over at Marvel, have a 6-issue miniseries coming out called Bug Wars. That is like, and this really resonated with me when Jason Aaron was talking about this. He said something like when he grew up as a kid and would go out into his backyard, he would imagine like shrinking down and thinking about all the adventures in this like ecosystem that exists just in your backyard,
Uh-huh.
and all of the like politics of like the ants and their conflicts and whatever. And so this comic is kind of like that. It's like a kid goes into his backyard. More or less, this is like kind of, the elevator pitch for it,
Yeah.
and who knows how much more nuanced it is than this. But kid goes into his backyard, shrinks down, becomes part of this like epic land battle like in his backyard that, people of our world are just not privy to.
So dope.
Yeah, I think it's a really fun idea. And
Totally.
it's only 6-issue commitment. Can't go wrong.
Who's publishing that?
Image.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would have guessed like Boom or Dark Horse,
Mhm.
but okay, totally.
James Tynion.
He's got
Tunyon.
he's got a book, a comic book coming out.
Have you heard this? would you believe? He teased like a horror crossover event, and there's not much details about it.
Yeah,
But it sounds like we may see characters from several of his titles meeting.
I heard about this.
So this could be cool. We might find out that there's some interconnectivity of a lot of James Tynyon's horror series.
So sick.
Yeah. Some NYCC news that came out yesterday was 3 new Infinity comics. There's an Astonishing Spider-Man, Astonishing X-Men, and Astonishing Avengers. And we've got writers like Scott Aukerman from Comedy Bang Bang,
Sure.
who wrote
Friend of the show.
a little bit of an Unlimited book before that we really enjoyed. Tim Seeley, Alex Packnadell, Steve Orlando.
Woo!
We've got some really big names for a digital-only
No kidding.
series. So those will be really fun, and I'm excited to have Unlimited for that.
Cool.
We're getting rewarded with better, not better, but just more fresh new content that's exclusive to the platform.
Nice.
Let's see. You already got that. Oh, okay. Bad Idea Comics.
Yes.
Remember them?
Yeah.
I don't know that do they still exist?
I don't know. I've never purchased one of their books because they don't sell them at comic book stores.
Yeah, they are really hard to get your hands on. That is so true. They did do a series called The Lot that I was able to get my hands on, which is like a horror story that takes place on the set of like a movie.
That's
Or
a
like,
fun idea.
It's like abandoned like lot that gets purchased by a production company when they're going to make a movie there, and it's like haunted and a horror story unfolds.
I wanted to read EMAC or whatever it was, and like I couldn't just go and buy it, so I
yes.
didn't read it.
Yeah, right. That comic was pretty cool.
Of course
like
it
that.
was.
It felt very.
I'm getting worked up talking about the fact that I can't read it.
So that's a Matt Kint book, and it was really interesting because I had just come off of reading all of Mind Management, and then this book comes out and is very referential, I feel, to a handful of things that happen in Mind Management, and feels like a story that could have taken place in that world, but is being illustrated in a way that's like really hyper realistic, which if you know Matt Kint's art style. It's very like watercolor, quick,
Yeah.
and loose, like, which has its own charm, but it felt like a big production movie version
Oh,
of
short.
of it, just
Yeah.
because of like the art style that it was given. It just completely tonally changed like the story.
Yeah.
So, ENIAC is what it's called. It's
ENIAC.
really, really cool. Okay, but in any case, the lot that comic is getting adapted into a movie, and it's being written by the writer who wrote Megan, M. Thregan.
Oh, and Thregan.
M.
Sure.
Thregan writer, Keela Cooper.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
really excited for that. I mean, the tone of M. Thregan was great.
I
So.
can't wait for them to release it on fucking Rotodial or like those speak and spell things, whatever bullshit they decide to release that as.
This is a reference to bad ideas, seemingly parade of bad ideas that they found charming in the comic book industry.
Yeah.
Of making things that were just inaccessible for the purposes of exclusivity and
Yeah, you'll have to swim to the bottom of a lake and dig
Yeah.
up a flash drive that has the movie in it. Then you can watch it.
Oh man, too funny. That's all I had.
Excellent.
A lot of news this week.
Lot of-
Obviously, like
yeah.
we mentioned, NYCC, yada yada.
We're gonna have a lot of more news next week.
Yeah.
Which is good because hopefully Greg will be back.
Yeah.
Big fingers crossed.
We'll put him in charge of collating all of the
Yeah.
other NYCC stuff we missed.
Sorry, Greg.
You have a job now.
That's what happens when you miss. You get assigned
You
items.
missed once. You are now host number 3. Of course, I'm gonna insist. I'm still the main host, babe.
Yeah. Well, we record at your house, so
Yeah, that's right. I take charge. We never discussed it. I just insisted on introing the show.
sure.
Power grab.
Damn. Didn't even realize.
But Greg, you're the lowest ranking member of First Issue Club again, and you've been tasked with recapping NYCC next week.
All right. Should we talk about comics?
Yes.
Okay.
So many first issues this week.
A
like
lot
we
of stuff.
mentioned. Yeah.
What'd you read?
I read Mystique #1 and Vicarious #1.
I was so excited about Vicarious. Will you talk about that?
Yes. Okay. So Ryan Perot, is that how I always say his name? It's spelled Parrott.
Yeah, it's either that or Parrot.
Yeah. Ryan Perot sounds right.
He did Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yes.
And
Radiant Black.
and Infernals, right?
Yes. No. Is that right?
I'm pretty sure.
I can't say for sure.
I'm pretty sure.
I did like Infernals though. That book was cool.
It was fun. Anyway.
Great writer. Kind of like for a book like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that was like an intellectual property book. He really took it seriously and did some things with the characters that people were like, wow, something special is happening here.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, he was telling really interesting, great stories and didn't own any of the characters, right? So he's since kind of moved away from a lot of intellectual property stuff and been like, I'm a great writer. I tell great stories. I do great things with superheroes. Why don't I do them with these original stories and characters that I own? So we're getting a lot of great independent comics from him. And for me, anyway, I think they're a little more accessible than the IP things because I feel like I don't have to know like a back history of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I don't have to say like, oh, is that for kids or is it for people my age?
You don't have to know what a Morphin Grid is.
Exactly right. I don't have to understand Rita Repulsa. Okay, so this book introduces the idea of proxies in our culture.
Sure.
Which is an illegal service where people get implants so you can see and feel what they experience.
Okay.
And after that concept is introduced, you kind of get a few pages of just like saying like, okay, it's an interesting concept. And then you see a few executions of it and you're like, wow, this is really interesting. There's so much to play with here on like how different people might use different proxies for different things. And because it is like an illegal implant thing, there is like a seedy nature to some of it, and it feels like underground dark web access sort of thing. So that's another kind of interesting layer to this. We
So
see,
is it like you get the implant and I control you,
no,
or
you have
I
no
plug into you?
you have no control. But,
Okay.
but you basically like tap in through an online connection. You could be in the other side of the world,
Yeah.
and then but basically tap into my feed, but you are feeling my feelings, you're seeing what I'm seeing, and experiencing my sensations.
Got it. So
So
if Taylor Swift had one, I could be Taylor
you
Swift.
could be Taylor Swift, feel like what it was to put on an awesome
Yeah,
concert
yeah,
to
yeah.
like
I get it now.
80,000 people.
I get it.
Um, in this, we see somebody who's like a high profile person that is on a first date, and they've sent a proxy.
Sure.
And it's like, I want to experience this date, but like, I'm not going to bother meeting somebody on a first date that's not through like proxy. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to take the risk of like meeting somebody. Obviously, this is in like a future world wherein it may be riskier as a high profile person to meet people. But it just sets up a handful of scenarios like that where you're just like, wow, there's way more places that this could go than just like sex. Like, my mind immediately was like, oh, this is going to be like sex work. What is it like to be someone sexy? And they acknowledge that in this like several times over. But there's just a lot more interesting things they could do with it.
See, my mind, again, two types of people, went to
Okay, don't do that to me. Sex obsessed Mike and then me.
yeah, mine went to, oh, so some guy's going to be a serial killer and people tap into him to watch him kill people.
Yeah, right.
Two types of people.
Yeah.
Sex and violence.
Yeah, all right. We are the two types. That's all there is. No peace and love, just
No.
sex and violence.
That's right.
Okay. We have a lead in this comic, which is a guy who kind of like saves a dude getting the shit kicked out of him on the street. And then we find out that that guy was a proxy, and he was getting beat up by people who are just like, this is a fucked up part of culture. We reject it. We don't like it. And he saves this guy and gives the guy a ride back to his house because he's in no shape to drive, whatever. And then kind of gets the hookup to become a proxy and start like a stream of income.
Got it.
Which is, it's a hard thing to, obviously it's illegal.
Yeah.
It's on the underground. It's hard to meet people without wealth and find out a way to like get these implants in an affordable fashion. So this guy hooks him up and he becomes a proxy, and then you experience him trying to get like his first clients, what they want to see. Is he good at it? What does it mean to be a good proxy for somebody? Yada, yada, yada. And then there is a turn at the end of the book that was a little tough to interpret, but I think I've sussed out what it is.
Okay.
Would you like to hear the turn?
I would love to hear it.
Okay. We find out at the end that, and this is what I think is happening, that Justin, who we've been following, isn't actually Justin. It is someone who murdered Justin and has kind of taken his life.
So, like IRL proxy.
An IRL proxy. This person was kind of obsessed with the idea of proxying.
Got it.
Picked a person, killed them as trying to become them, and throughout some random circumstances got hooked up with being a proxy.
Got it.
So you see, it's really clever the way they handle some of this, because you see him applying for jobs, trying to find work as Justin, and he's trying to schmooze people and is like, who needs references? And at the time you assume, oh, this is just because hasn't been able to hold a steady job and he's kind of like a loose loser. He's got like tattoos on his face, whatever. And you see someone, his landlord knocking on his door, and he's like, Justin, you better fucking pay me. And he's just like, I'll have it to you, next week. Sorry, through the door.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of the comic, he runs into the landlord, and the landlord's like, hey, you're the guy who's been staying with Justin. Where the fuck is my money? Where is Justin?
Got
and
it.
you're like, wait a second, I thought this guy was Justin. And then you see him
A dead body.
in the bathtub while this guy is kind of like giving a speech to himself in the
Sure.
mirror about what it means to like live through somebody else. So it is going to kind of turn into this like fucked up horror story about the infatuation of becoming someone else or letting other people become you. Pretty interesting first issue.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds dense.
Yeah, and I'll say for as dense as it sounds, it is a pretty breezy read.
Sure.
It was easy peasy to get through.
Yeah.
Very pretty, interesting art style that was engaging and felt kind of like loose and fun and indie.
The cover was very eye-catching.
The cover is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love it. It's one of those things where you hear like, okay, here's the premise for a comic book that there's proxies and you can live as somebody else. Like, okay, for an independent comic that's coming out on like an independent publisher that you can generally trust to have quality comics, that's enough for me to buy it. And that's honestly enough for me to probably be like, yeah, I'll give the first few issues a try.
Sure.
But they, in Ryan Perot fashion, has given you a lot more to chew on in just one issue. So there's a lot of depth here.
You back up the pitch with a good story.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we gave Radiant Black big props for this a while back for doing the thing where it starts as one thing and then 5 issues in they completely change what the story is and who the lead characters are, and you're like, well, damn, I wasn't expecting that so many issues in.
Very cool.
Yeah. So like him a lot. And then my other book.
Yeah.
Since I'm on a roll here.
Go nuts.
And this one's quick. I don't have a ton to say about it, but Mystique #1, our
Declan
favorite
Shalvey.
shape-shifting mutant, Declan Shalvey, another club favorite writer and artist.
Yeah.
One of my favorite artists. Got a really rad style. So we've got Mystique kind of back in the saddle as a spy.
Okay.
More or less. And the like intro to this book or the log line is kind of like spy, freedom fighter, killer for hire, kind of like lists all the different things that like a mercenary, might be, or the situation they can find themselves in, and all these different self-identifiers for somebody who does like wet work.
Yeah, sure.
So it's kind of cool to see like it could go a bunch of different ways. And throughout the whole like Krakoan era of X-Men comics, everybody's part of this government structure, and now we've got a lot of our X-Men who aren't part of a system anymore, or they're maybe they're out for their own neck, or they're looking to other places for money and sustainability, or like a reason or a purpose is self-found instead of being like given to you by a nation that's like a greater idea.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to see these characters that we spent so long with in one fashion take their turn back to being a little more isolated, and how they're really welcoming that from an era of politics. And I don't know, that's an interesting side of it from someone who's an X-Men freak.
Sure.
On its own, though, there are, I'll say, a handful of existing X-Men characters and some characters from S.H.I.E.L.D. that are in this.
Okay.
But I don't think you need to necessarily be an X-head to enjoy this. And I think this is kind of like the whole concept of the fresh beginning thing, that like, yeah, maybe it adds a little bit if you understand some of the relationships of some of the previous characters, but it feels very like, here's a espionage-ish story, and our heroine is just being introduced to a Nick Fury type, and that person is trying to figure out, is this person a good guy? Are they a bad guy?
Sure.
There's some miscommunication in identity, and someone gets apparently killed that they thought was Mystique and was not, and so there's going to be some like repercussions there. It's just more or less it's a superhero spy espionage type story.
Sure. And Shelby excels at that.
Yeah, good at that sort of
Yeah.
thing. I'm trying to think of the name of the book that I'm thinking of. That was
Is it
like
Old Dog?
a little bit of like a murder mystery.
Oh.
Yeah, Old Dogs was great.
Yeah.
He did this kind of like murder mystery book that I really enjoyed, but could be something like that.
Yeah.
But if I had to, if you only gave me $5 for the week, and we're like, what do you want to spend it on?
Yeah.
Knowing what I know,
Yeah.
Vicarious. Am
Sure.
I saying that right? Vicarious.
Yeah. 601.
Because you're living vicariously through somebody.
Yeah.
That's my pick of the week out of those two comics. I just thought like an original indie story that really grabbed me.
Sure. Great creator.
Yeah.
Awesome. Who's doing the art on Mystique? Do you know? Just offhand.
Oh, I
I'm putting
don't
you on
know
the spot. I'm
offhand,
sorry.
but I did really like the cover, especially.
Shelby did it.
Yeah, I love his art style
I do
so
too.
much.
Yeah.
And then I can't say on the interiors. The interiors gave me a kind of like minimal Marcos Martin, Javier
Okay.
Rodriguez sort of style
Okay.
vibe. It's not either of them,
Yeah.
but it is like semi minimal in a way that I like really enjoy.
Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
A lot of solid colors. Like I just love the way those creators work with like clean, simple lines
Yeah.
and really solid colors and make really eye popping
Yeah.
comics. It kind of felt like that.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like you read good stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I also read a lot of good stuff.
Yep. You got the bigger stack by far.
Yeah,
Thanks for doing the heavy lifting this episode.
Hey man, I went early and I'm trying to get back on the horse of reading.
Yep.
So I think I succeeded. So a lot of heavy hitters this week. Also, I read Batman and Robin Year One. This is from superstar creative team Mark Waid and Chris Samney.
One of my favorite duos of all time.
Yes,
I mean,
writing.
their Daredevil run,
Yes,
unreal.
their Captain America run,
Yeah.
insane. The world's finest.
Yes.
Their Shazam run. I mean, they really haven't missed. No, that's Mark Waid and
World's Finest was Mora and Wade.
Mora and Wade.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is Mark Waid and Chris Samney writing Batman and Robin as Robin's basically. This is his first mission with Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a lot of Dick Grayson being incredibly gung ho, incredibly like carefree, and it's just so refreshing. I'm a huge Robin fan for this specific reason. Seeing him as a almost mirror image of what Batman is.
Yeah.
There's a scene in this where he is getting introduced to Commissioner Gordon, and Gordon's like, "Oh God, there's two of you," and Robin's like, "Nice try, copper," and he's like, "I'm Robin," very like circus performer. Yeah. He's always jumping in ahead of Batman, and Batman's like, "Wait, God damn it, hold on." So the interaction between Batman and Robin is just like chef's kiss. I mean, it's totally on point. And then on top of that, you get a story about Batman trying to track down Two-Face because he's stolen a police file. And you come to find out that Two-Face is actually working for like a bigger boss, and we don't know who that is.
Oh.
So it's kind of a traditional crime story, which works for both Mark Waid and the time frame that they're writing in.
Okay.
Kind of a classic Batman story. He's not out fighting some intergalactic alien space lord. He's just fighting like a mob boss. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Two-Face reporting to Falcone, a Falcone type.
Yeah, Falcone type. That's exactly right. So,
well, you love a comic with a ward.
I do.
I mean, if we can get back to basics, people, and have more wards in comics, I think we'd all be better off.
Sure. I think every superhero needs a ward.
Everybody needs a ward.
So Batman and Robin, very fun. If you like the kind of classic feel that both the art, the writing, and the story give you, this is kind of a home run.
Samney really lends himself to kind of the classic simpler times
Yes.
of comics, and that's not always, the sort of work he does, but
I think if unfortunately, if Darwin Cook would have been around, he would have been writing this. But Chris Samney's basically as close as you can get.
Yeah.
Sticking with Batman, I also read Batman Full Moon. And the cool thing about this book is that the A cover is glow in the dark.
No way.
Yeah. And they shipped it. I'll show for everyone on the video feed here. They shipped it with a little protecty cover.
Oh, nice.
So your glow in the dark doesn't wear out. But yeah, all of that, it's a plain black cover with white, and all of that white
cool
glows in the dark.
Nice.
And anytime something glows in the dark, I will purchase it because I am a child.
I love it.
So the pitch here, this is written by Rodney Barnes, Philadelphia. Rodney Barnes. Right?
Oh, rad.
Yeah. He wrote this.
Yeah.
And the art is
someone else.
Correct. Not Rodney Barnes. I know for sure. Anyway, it's Batman fighting a werewolf. That's the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
It's a Black Label book, so it's very, gritty and realistic.
Yeah.
But you get Batman interacting with Kurt Langstrom, the Man Bat.
Yeah.
Talking about a werewolf, and Batman's like, werewolf? I'm into science, as he's talking to a guy who transforms into a giant bat, which is always kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
But it's a cool story. It's very like a traditional Wolfman,
cool.
werewolf, where he's investigating these murders, and it's, is it a giant cat on the loose? Is it some sort of new super villain on the loose? No, we find out that it's this guy who's
some dude.
He's escaped from a Wayne Industries lab where they were trying to turn him into a super weapon or something. So you are getting a little bit of his story.
Batman is responsible for the havoc being wreaked.
That's exactly right. But you also get the flip side, him being, cursed to be a werewolf.
Yeah.
You get some of that, story.
You follow that character? Like, are they like just as much a main character of the story as Bruce is?
For sure.
Cool.
Because, part of what makes a good werewolf story is getting
empathy for the character.
Yeah, exactly. It is truly a curse, not something you want to have.
Yeah. Right.
Because you're tearing people apart, every full moon. So, what's interesting is Batman gets bit and scratched by this werewolf multiple times.
Okay.
So I don't know if we'll actually end up with Batwolf or not, but maybe. So Batman Full Moon, it's good stuff. It's very cool.
I love it.
It's perfect for the season.
Yeah. Hey, superheroes love getting spooky too.
It's true.
And they can keep it classic just like the rest of them.
Sticking with the spooky theme, I read Exorcism at 1600 Penn.
Yep. If you don't know, White House address.
That's right. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. This is very, very... I actually had to read the first couple pages of this like a couple of times before it clicked with me that a lot of this is like an homage to those classic demon movies like Rosemary's Baby, like The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of like getting to know the characters so that you feel invested in their lives before the horror sets in.
Yeah.
And this is a really, really beefy book. I think it's a 48 pager.
Oh yeah, it does look thick.
So it takes a lot before you get to the end. But the kicker is that the family that is being impacted by this possession is the first family. So you have a blended family, a son and a daughter, husband, and the wife is the president. And the daughter gets, she starts to get bullied at school, and she whatever, blah blah blah, ends up possessed by the end of the book. And you gotta deal with it.
Is it clear that it's a real possession, or is there a chance that the character is faking it?
They make it pretty clear.
Okay.
There's a lot of like you look at the
head
cover. Well, yeah, there's a lot of like this, demon in the background
Okay, yeah.
and, all that kind of stuff. So really, I mean, that's what kind of brought me to it was like, what do you do when you have to kind of maintain an image
Yeah.
as the president, but you also have to deal with your child being possessed.
Yeah. Wow.
So, pretty fun book.
All right, cool.
It's limited. It's out on IDW, the company with the new terrible logo.
LD.
So,
It's out on LD.
Yeah. And Vanessa Del Rey did the art. So the art is super creepy and super good. To no one's surprise, I read Moon Knight Fist of Khonshu.
Yes.
And it's by the same Moon Knight team that's been doing Moon Knight. The reason I wanted to talk about it was because it's an awesome jumping on point.
Okay.
Mark Spector is back from the dead.
Yay.
He's leading the Moon Knight mission, or the Midnight mission again. But the story here now is there's a cop who is investigating Moon Knight, but she's investigating it as a potential cult.
Oh, is the Midnight Mission
Is
a
the
cult?
Midnight Mission a cult? Is Mark Spector a cult leader?
Yeah.
He has surrounded himself with a teenager who is a vampire. A young, impressionable teenager, a young, impressionable soldier with a history of PTSD and priors.
Yep.
A fallen celebrity in Greer, Tigra.
Yeah.
And
and he is the avatar of a deity.
Yeah, well, he says he is,
yeah,
right?
Right. Like that's great. What a good angle.
A very cool angle. And then on top of that, you get this intertwined story of Moon Knight talking to this new character who is like a penguin type. He runs a club and he's kind of a big boss, and Moon Knight comes in and he's like, "Oh, Moon Knight, sit down, take a load off," that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But he's selling real, true, actual pixie dust as a drug.
Ooh, hello.
Which is like incredibly, super addictive, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The flip at the end of the
what
book
I
is
wouldn't give for some pixie schneef.
some pixie snoosh. But the flip at the end of the book is you find out that the cop is actually working for the drug lord guy.
Okay, dirty cop.
Dirty cop. She's addicted to the pixie dust.
Got it.
So, again, very cool jumping on point.
Yep.
With Mark going back kind of to his more street level roots. He's trying to clean up the streets from the drug lord.
I've got a question for you.
I've probably got an answer.
Where do you think Jed MacKay sits amongst the pantheon of Moon Knight creators?
Man, I was thinking about that today.
He's written so many It's one of those things where you don't realize it.
Yeah.
And then a couple years pass, and it's like, this person may have written more individual Moon Knight books than like close to anyone else.
Yes. So he wrote 30 issues of Moon Knight plus 9 issues of Vengeance of, and now he's starting on Fist of Khonshu.
And then a handful of like little side minis along the way.
Plus the minis. I don't think he wrote City of the Dead. No, because that was David Pepos.
Yes.
But he wrote like the Devil's Reign spinoff.
Yep.
He wrote an annual. He's written stories in like the phases of the Moon Knight. So like he's got to be up there.
And has wrapped a lot of this stuff into like big events at this point too.
Well, so you say, where does he sit in the pantheon, right?
Yeah.
And like he is obviously the guy who is responsible for this Moon Knight renaissance we see ourselves in.
Yeah.
Where he was, the reason that Blood Hunt came to the end that it came to.
Yeah.
And he's in every book that Jed MacKay writes because he's such a cool character. I mean, he's high up there.
Yeah.
Like if he writes another 20 or 30 issues and gets to the point where he's up to the bulk of folks like Doug Mensch, I mean, there's no reason he wouldn't be sitting on the top of the pile.
When I hear Moon Knight, I think Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yes.
Then Jed MacKay.
Yeah. I mean, I think most people would agree with you.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? You got artist and then
and a writer
and a writer.
Yeah.
But those are the two names that I feel like I associate most with the character now,
Totally.
as far as like impact and longevity and
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say if you guys have heard me talk about Moon Knight for a long time now, and if any of what I've said sounds interesting to you, this is absolutely the best jumping on point.
Yeah.
You really don't need to know anything that has happened in the past, and there's plenty of editorial notes in here that explain. But even then, it's mostly limited to like, oh, this happened in Blood Hunt, but you don't need to read Blood Hunt to know what's going on.
Is there a new character or something that's coming?
To Moon Knight?
Yeah.
Maybe. Probably.
Okay.
But I can't think of...
I was trying to... I felt like one of these upcoming issues in this series was like, oh, you got to get your hands on this one just in case. But I might be conflating it with something else.
I mean, Moon Squire might be showing up. The
Moon Squire. Maybe that's what I'm thinking
the little
of.
champions guy.
First time they cross paths. Because they haven't met yet, right?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Fist of Khonshu is awesome.
Cool.
Good stuff. So, and then the last one I read was Where Monsters Lie, Cul-de-sac. So this is from Kyle Starks and Peter Kowalski. Yeah, this is the sequel series to Where Monsters Lie. Picks up right where the last book ended off.
Yeah.
And our hero from the last book has become a killer in his own right.
All right.
And has moved into this alternate site. This cul-de-sac where serial killers live. And by the end of the book has vowed to kill them all. But I mean, it's the same thing as the last book, just more of that same good stuff. You get to meet another interesting cast of serial killer characters that are tropes of, horror movie folks. And it's just so good. It really is.
I love the motif of all these different types of characters.
Yeah.
Like the big, bulky butcher dude with the like leather mask over his face living next door to like the little lady who collects possessed dolls.
Yeah.
Like so fun seeing them all living this suburban lifestyle and the HOA of this like horror neighborhood.
And for them to be like, hey, you left that kid's body parts on my curb.
We really got to watch what we're doing here if we want to keep up what we're doing.
Yeah, your Christmas lights are still up, complaining at each other about this kind of stuff.
It's such an interesting concept that was executed. And I think one of the most impressive things about not just these comics, but I think Kyle Starks in general, is that a lot of the concepts sound really outrageous, or they maybe sound like they're a punchline or something.
Yeah.
And then you read it and you're like, oh, this has a weight to it, or like it took itself the right amount of serious in the right way.
Yes.
To land or hit different than you expect something with like the log line of the book to hit.
Yes. Well, and it's very, I don't know, Coen Brothers maybe, where everything is delivered in a non-funny way, but the humor evolves out of
the entire situation.
Yes, the inherent ridiculousness of everyday life.
Yeah, right. That's a great call.
But it just so happens to involve serial killers and supernatural psychopaths.
Yeah.
So
it always drives people crazy when like those Coen Brothers movies are like nominated for like, what they combine musical and comedy together.
Yeah.
And then they have something like, was it The Serious Man?
Oh my God.
Like nominated for best comedy. And you're like, wait, was that a comedy?
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where like you sit back after the end of the movie and you're like, humor.
How funny was that? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. And it's in the same category as like The Hangover and Les Mis.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Totally.
Yes. But yeah, this is very much one of those books where, I think based on our interview we did with Kyle Starks on the first book, I think he would make the claim that this is not a humor book.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of humor to be found in it.
Yes. When I was reading the first volume of Where Monsters Lie, there were several moments of delight that made me giggle.
Yes.
That, yeah, I can take it as a serious story, and but still find some like humor in it.
Some silly.
That might be something that just like is unavoidable, or like within him.
Yes.
To just like bring some of that out in the delivery of
Totally. Yeah, I would absolutely recommend. I would say you should read the first volume, not only because it's incredibly good, but it will help you understand and enjoy this second book.
Yeah, the motive of the main character. Yeah,
exactly. I think it could probably be read without knowledge of the first series, but your reading experience will be greatly enhanced by reading the first volume. So, Where Monsters Lie, Cul-de-sac, knocked it out of the park, as I knew it would be.
That's our big Halloween recommend for the week.
Yeah, for sure.
It sounds like a great horror comic.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So,
all right.
That's all I got.
We did it again. I hope that one of these comics strikes your fancy. And just, again, take care of your fancy. Get it out every once in a while, dust it off. Think about the things that suit it well, and entertain those things.
Yeah.
Keep your fancy enriched, and do it through comic books. That's the goal of the show, man.
Yes, we're trying to tickle your fancy.
Onboard you into new experiences and tickle your fancy with the medium that is comics. There's something for everybody, and I truly believe that. You just have to find it. If you didn't find something this week, maybe you will next week on a subsequent episode of the First Issue Club.
Join us on our Patreon. We've got bonus episodes that we release every week. What else? Join our Discord. You can talk to like-minded comic book nerds. Fire off at us.
We just added a channel.
Yes.
To respond to the podcast, which is giving me cold sweats.
Nah, you're fine.
But not just corrections. You can agree with us in there too. That's what I'm hoping for the most.
I would love for hearty agreements. Or recommendations.
We should, maybe that'll be a new segment, is the feedback corner. If someone adds something to the conversation that we didn't get to, that was a great point, that we can take a couple of minutes at the end of the episode to say, like, hey, these were some good points that were brought up on the Discord.
I already took a good point and renamed the channel, because I originally called it Actually.
Yes, and someone pointed out that this is a show on
Dropout.
On Dropout.
Yeah, and also the channel wasn't just for correcting us.
Yeah.
So. Also, make sure you're registered to vote.
Sure.
I don't like talking about politics because it makes my brain itch.
Yeah.
But you should get out and vote. Rock the vote.
Did you see Lewis Black did a thing about undecided voters?
No.
And was just like, you know what? Some of you don't need to vote. If you're still undecided, and this always drives me crazy. Like, at this point, what else do you need, man? Like, your choices couldn't be more different. Like, and you've had, one of them has been vice president for the past 4 years. The other one was president for 4 years, 4 years prior. And he's been in the public consciousness since I was born.
Yes.
Like, what else do you need? Like, it is nuts to be undecided, in my opinion.
For a lot of reasons, I'll agree. Yes. For a lot of reasons, I'll agree. But no matter your politics, please register to vote.
Sure.
It is your civic duty to get out and vote for Jill Stein.
This drove me fucking nuts. I knew a handful of people who voted.
We all did
for Jill Stein and her cover band, or whatever. Which, if you haven't heard, search Jill Stein's band, and she had this like hippie group. What an interesting character.
She's on the ballot again this year for the Green Party.
Is she really?
Every year, man.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Of course, every year.
Man.
So, there we go. First Issue Club.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. First Issue Club podcast is brought to you by Boulevard Brewing Company, the people responsible for our favorite drinks, the Space Camper Cosmic IPA family of beers. Our show is edited and produced by our hosts Mike DeStacy, Greg Lichtag, and Andy Vargas. You can find us on social media at First Issue Club, and you can join the supporters who keep our humble podcast going on our Patreon at patreon.com/firstissueclub.